The night was unusually quiet. Karachi's usually bustling streets had thinned out under the dim orange glow of flickering streetlights. Razia tightened the dupatta round her shoulders as she walked briskly along the alley behind the house where she worked. The trash bins overflowed with rot discarded fruit peels, broken bottles, torn clothes. But then, something stopped her. A sound, faint, fragile, a cry. She froze. The plastic bag of stale roti in her hand forgotten. The sound came again, soft, breathless, like a kitten in pain. But it wasn't a kitten. It was a baby. Razia's heart slammed against her ribs. She looked around. No one. Just the whisper of wind through rusted tin sheets and a distant honk on the main road. Carefully, she approached the dumpster, her slippers crunching over broken glass. The crying grew sharper, now piercing, urgent. She reached behind the rusted bin and gasped. A tiny bundle, wrapped in what looked like a blood-stained shawl, a newborn. The umbilical cord still clinging to its skin. Eyes shut tight, lips trembling. A girl, Ya Allah, Razia whispered, her hands trembling as she knelt. She didn't think. Instinct took over. She scooped the baby into her arms, the damp cloth clinging to her fingers. The child's body was cold to cold. She glanced around again, her heart racing. Who could have done this? Why here? The night offered no answers. She half ran, half walked to her one-room flat in the old quarter. The door creaked as she entered, careful not to wake the neighbors. Her daughter, Mahak, stirred on the sharp eye but didn't wake. Razia lit the lantern and laid the baby on a towel. She began cleaning the tiny body with warm water from the kettle, whispering a prayer with each stroke. The child whimpered, then wailed. It was the first real sound of life. The next morning, the city roared back to life. Buses rumbled, vendors shouted, and radios blared cricket commentary. But inside Razia's flat, the world was still. Mahak blinked awake and sat up. Slowly, Emmy, what's that? Razia looked up from the bundle in her lap. Her face was pale from worry, but her voice was firm. Aminat high. Kisiki biremi kanatija. Kuda ni humine dek kar chota high. Mahak's eyes widened. You brought a baby home from the trash? She would have died, Razia said. Quietly, I couldn't leave her there. Mahak looked at the newborn. What now? I don't know, Razia said. Her voice cracked as she said it. But I'm going to find out. Later that day, she went to work at the Shah's residence, pretending nothing had changed. But everything had. Her mind wasn't on the dishes or the laundry. It was with the baby wrapped now in one of Mahak's old shawls, tucked inside a basket. Razia scrubbed the marble floor, her knees aching. From the kitchen, she overheard Mrs. Shah on the phone. The words floated through the air, slow and deliberate. Yes, it's done. No one saw anything. That place behind the clinic. It's clean. Razia's hands froze mid-dash, scrubbed at her. Eyes lifted, her breath caught. That place behind the clinic. Clean. It couldn't be a coincidence. Could it? That night, Razia sat by the baby's side, gently rocking the basket as Mahak looked on. What if someone comes looking? Mahak whispered. No. One throws away what they want back, Razia replied. But even as she said it, her eyes went to the door, locked, bolted. Still, the fear settled in like a shadow, because someone out there had tried to bury a secret and she had picked it up with her own hands, and someone might want that secret. Gone, for good. Razia moved through the neighborhood like a ghost. She wore the same faded dupatta, carried the same grocery bag, smiled the same tired smile. But everything inside her had changed. The baby whom she hadn't named yet was now hidden under a pile of blankets in the old steel trunk, in the corner of her room. She kept the trunk unlocked, but partly closed, so the baby wouldn't suffocate. Mahak stayed home from school that day, listening for every cry, every sound from the alleyway. That morning, Razia passed the same dumpster. The blood-stained shawl was gone. The bin had been emptied, cleaned, like nothing ever happened. But the air around her still felt heavy, like someone had seen her. Later that afternoon, as she swept the Shah's drawing room, the houseboy, Wasim, looked up from his phone and smirked. You heard, he said casually. Police came to Block D last night. Someone called in a report. Baby sounds coming from the trash. but when they got there, nothing. Razia didn't look up. Eka. Yeah, weird, right? Wasim continued. You think it's true? That someone dumped a baby? She kept sweeping. This city, anything can happen. Wasim muttered, before turning back to his phone. That night, as the baby whimpered softly in her sleep, Mehak leaned against the door, eyes wide with worry. What if someone told? The police. What if they say you stole her? I didn't, Razia snapped, sharper than she meant to. Then, softer, I found her. I saved her. Mehak said nothing. Razia placed her hand on the baby's tiny chest. It rose and fell in delicate rhythm. But, you're right, Razia murmured. People talk. And the law, it doesn't care about people like us. I need to do something, but I don't know what. The next day, Razia went to the local mosque's madrasa office. There was a bulletin board with notices. She pinned up a handwritten note. Found, newborn baby girl. If anyone is missing her, please contact this number. No questions asked. But even as she walked away, her stomach twisted. It felt too much like a trap, one that she had set herself. That night, as the rain began to fall lightly over the city, someone knocked on her door. Soft, deliberate knocks. Razia froze. Mehak stiffened on the bed. She tiptoed to the door. Who is it? Silence. She opened the door slowly. No one. But on the floor, wrapped in plastic, was a folded piece of newspaper. She picked it up, unwrapped. It got inside a crumpled photo of a baby, and on the back, scribbled in ink, keep it, but keep quiet, or else. Her fingers trembled. Someone knew. The Shah household was unusually quiet that morning. Too quiet. Razia moved like a shadow between the granite counters and gleaming dishes, ears tuned to everything. Her hands worked washing, drying, stacking, but her mind raced. The note, the photo. Someone had been at her door, watching, warning. And now, her gut whispered that the Shahs knew more than they were letting on. As she stood rinsing a wine glass, Mrs. Shah walked in, heels clicking, phone glued to her ear, voice low but urgent. I told you already, no one saw her. The trash was cleared. Razia froze mid-motion. Mrs. Shah turned her back, pacing slowly across the kitchen floor. Yes, the maid. Poor thing doesn't even speak unless spoken to. She wouldn't do anything stupid. Silence. No, she didn't recognize her. She's too simple for that. Razia's hand gripped the edge of the counter. Her breath caught in her throat. Recognize who? Mrs. Shah suddenly glanced over her shoulder, catching Razia's eyes for the briefest second. Razia looked down immediately, pretending to scrub harder. I said I'd handle it. Stop calling me like I work for you. She ended the call with a soft click, then placed the phone down and left the kitchen. Razia stood still for a long time, heart pounding. Later that evening, she sat with Mehak in their tiny room, the baby asleep in the trunk beside them. The sound of rain tapping against the rusted window pane filled the silence between them. I heard her say something today, Razia whispered. Mehak looked up. She said I didn't recognize someone. That I wouldn't. Who? Mehak asked. I don't know, but they're hiding something, and they think I'm too stupid to see it. The next day, Razia lingered in the hallway after putting away clean linen in the Shah's guest room. A soft sobbing sound drifted from behind Alina's bedroom door. She hadn't seen Alina in weeks. Not really. The girl barely left her room anymore. Just glimpses, bare feet, dull eyes, hair chopped short and uneven. The crying grew louder, then stopped suddenly. A loud thump followed. Razia hesitated, then gently knocked. There'd be no answer, only silence. That night, as she lay awake, she remembered something odd weeks ago. Before the baby appeared, she had seen the driver, Bilal, arguing with Mr. Shah in the driveway. It was heated, physical, and the next day, Bilal was gone. Just like that. Fired, they said. But now, something told her it wasn't that simple. She thought about the phrase Mrs. Shah had used. She didn't recognize her. Was she talking about the baby? Was there a girl in that? How silent and shamed who had been forced to throw away her own child. Razia turned to look at the sleeping baby. Could this child be Alina's? The next morning, as she carried breakfast to Alina's room, the girl opened the door just a crack. Their eyes met. Dark circles, hollow cheeks, something broken behind. Those eyes, Alina didn't speak. She just looked down at the tray. Then, barely audible, "You kept her, didn't you?" Razia's breath stopped. But Alina was already closing the door again. "Liari ki purain. Sensoffer than klinik min Razia ni kadam raka to usdil ki dadkan tezi se barn lagi. Klinik woi the jiska zikrusen shah sahibuk phone par suna the wo jaga. Piche se safkar digei hai. Bahana banakar usen mehek kli vaccination kaka. Magar uska osli maxed kuch or the reception se chithi lakar. Wo chup ki se emergency ward kterof nikolgay. Corridor min har kadam ksath uska dar jera hoda yarahada. Ek kamruk darways se roshni jalak rahi thi. Darwaza hall kasa kula the. Ender yakasan deka. Ek bed par safe chatter par lahu. Kdabe the. Nakabali bardasht kamoshi. Minasan file rack paz jacker ek folder nakala. USS Parlika the. Confidential. Folder Kender Surf ek page the Lina Shakam medical record. Umar, 17 Sol. Procedure, emergency abortion. Likan kisi Dr. Dastakat Nahi, Koigawa. Nahi, Surf ek kali line jahan consent likahana chahida. Razia ka chera zard pad gaya. Yehi sach the jisko usn andaze se samja the. Alina ni bacha peta kia the, likan yu shupang kli use mita dia gaya. Tabi ikea was ni use hashmin la dia. Tum hyahan nahi hana chahai. Woi nurse reception say. Razia ni gabra kaha, mehuk. Wo ender gei thi. Muj laga, likan nurse ki ankan min ek ajib sakti thi. Jauyahan say. Kisi or ki kahani min matguso. Likan uska chera, uski ankan kon min jamayansu. Razia ko kachuk thewo bisach janti hai, Razia ni deka. Nurse kot ki jeb se choti si chabi jalak rahi thi. Usan moka dek kar chabi nikoli. US kamruk darways kpaz gei jahan se usan pehal kisi corona kia was sunithi. Darwaza kola. Ender ek bedda, jispar lahu lagi hua chatter nike giri hua thi, ek korsi altai padi thi. Mesuz ho raha the kyahan kuchwa hai, kuch bura. Ek table par photo raki thealina ki. Ek musgrada chera, safed gown mean. Likan photo ka nikla hisa fata huava. Ankan mean chupa dardas chair se jalak rahava. Tabi peach. Se ek thandia was ayi, nikoljow. Razia ni gum kar deka. Shasahiba kadi thi. Unki ankan mean koi sharam. Koi mafi nahi thi. Uplaga ni alinek sath kia. Razia ni pucha, o was mean kampentha. Jisbach ko kakar min fenka gaya, woapka kun haina, shah sahiba aj bar karboli. Kuch razan ka zinda rena better hoda hai, warna sab kuch bikar yada hai. Razia ka chera anshuan se bead gaya, jab sach jut se tekrata. Hai, tu akir min surf sach zinda reta hai. Shah sahiba kia was mean zahartha, tu zinda ren klai chaprana siko. Razia ni photo ap ni chatter min lapetli. Or bag hair kuch kahi clinic se nikol gay, bahar barish gurai. Thi, likan ustil mean tufama. Usan socha the kbacha surf kisi ka guna hai, likan abuse samaja gayava. Yes surf guna nahi, ek sazish thi, USS Gark ender ki sazish. End of chapter 4. Next, chapter 5. The girl in the mirror kya chati hain main chapter 5. BEC paragraph style mean lakoon. You said. Is co-English main leak kerdakad said, of course. Here's chapter 4. Blood on white sheets rewritten in natural, flowing English paragraph form. Keeping the dark, suspenseful, and emotional tone intact. Chapter 4. Blood on white sheets word count. 650. The narrow corridor of the clinic in Liari smelled of antiseptic. And silence. Razia stepped inside, her heart pounding like a war drum in her chest. This was the same clinic she had overheard on Mrs. Shah's phone call, the one she'd mentioned. When she said, "It's been cleaned up from the back," using a false reason, Mahak's vaccination, Razia managed to slip past the receptionist and quietly veered toward the emergency wing. Her stomach twisted with dread as she approached a slightly open door. Cold white light spilled out from within. Inside, she saw at a single examination table, a white sheet stained with dried blood pooling beneath it. Her breath hitched. She crouched beside a cabinet and slid open a folder marked confidential. Her fingers trembled as she read the single page inside. It was a patient file. Name, Alina Shahij, 17. Diagnosis, post-abortion hemorrhage epicar, emergency. Termination date, 2 months. Agathir was no doctor's signature, no notes, no witness. Just a blank line where consent should have been. Razia's blood ran cold. This wasn't just a tragedy, it was a covered dash-up. Suddenly, a voice broke through the quiet. "You're not supposed to be here." It was the same nurse from the front desk, now looking much less polite. Razia fumbled, trying to come up with an excuse. "I thought my daughter. I got lost." But the nurse's expression had hardened. "Go home, Maid, before someone accuses you of theft." But Razia had seen her crying earlier outside a locked room. There was guilt in her eyes then. There was still guilt now. "You know something," Razia said quietly, her voice trembling. "You were crying." The nurse narrowed her eyes. "Stay out of things that don't belong to you." Then she turned and walked away. But Razia's eyes had already caught something else, a small brass key, hanging halfway out of the nurse's coat pocket. As the woman bent to pick up a glove, Razia swiftly took it. Her palms were sweating as she walked to the locked door. At the end of the hall, the same one she'd heard muffled crying behind the last time she was here. The key clicked. Inside was a room that reeked of metal and blood. A single hospital bed stood in the center. A twisted white sheet, stained red, lay crumpled on the floor. An overturned chair lay nearby. On the bedside table was a torn photo. Alina Shah, younger, smiling in a white dress. The lower half of the photo had been ripped away. Suddenly, Razia felt a presence behind her. "Leave," came the voice. She turned and there was Mrs. Shah, dressed in pale linen, face cold and unreadable. Razia held up the photo. Why? Did you hide this? What did you do to her, to the baby?" Mrs. Shah's jaw tightened. "Family secrets protect more than just one person's life." "You call this protection?" Razia snapped. "You nearly killed them both." Mrs. Shah took a step forward, her voice dropping to a chilling whisper. "Then let the truth come out, if you think it will help you. But don't forget where you come from." "Razia, people like us don't survive storms like these." Razia's heart thundered in her chest, but she stood her ground. "Sometimes the truth is the only thing that lets us survive." She tucked the torn photo into her scarf and walked out of the clinic without looking back. Rain tapped against the windows as she stepped outside, soaking the dusty street. But inside her, a fire had been lit. What she had once thought was a discarded child was actually the center of a conspiracy built on shame, silence, and power. And now she had proof. The mirror in Alina's bedroom was cracked along the corner just enough to distort the reflection. She sat in front of it most nights, silent, unmoving, staring into her own fractured face. She hadn't spoken much since Bilal disappeared. Her laughter was gone. Her voice had shrunk into a whisper of itself. What remained was a hollow girl, with unevenly chopped hair, haunted eyes, and the weight of an entire family's reputation pressing on her chest. Razia had seen the signs before, in other homes, other daughters, but never this close. That morning, Razia had entered Alina's room quietly, tray in hand. The girl was sitting on the floor near the window, knees pulled to her chest. She didn't look up. Her wrists bore faint scars, some old, some barely healing. The tray clinked gently as Razia placed it on the table, careful not to startle her. "Bibi, I know." Alina didn't respond. "I went to the clinic," Razia said softly, her voice almost maternal. "I saw the sheets. I saw the file. I know what they did to you." A long silence. Then Alina finally looked up, and her lips parted, not to deny it, not to cry, but to breathe, as if someone had finally spoken the words she wasn't allowed to. "I begged them," she whispered. "I told them I'd keep her, that I didn't care what anyone said. But they said she'd ruin everything." Her voice cracked at the word everything. Her whole life had been reduced to a family name. Her child had become a threat. "They beat him," she said suddenly. "Bilal, my father, he found out. He had the driver lock him in the storeroom before he was taken away." Razia's heart sank. "Where is he now?" I don't know, Alina said, shaking her head. No one talks about him anymore. He vanished. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but she didn't wipe them. I remember the birth. She continued in a monotone. They drugged me. I could still feel the pain. I could hear her crying. I reached out, and they pulled her away. Razia sat beside her and took her hand. It was ice cold. They told me she died, Alina said, and I believed them, until I saw your daughter on the street, carrying a shawl I recognized. Razia froze. You saw Mahak? I knew it was her, Alina said. I stitched that shawl myself. The air between them thickened. So you sent the note, Razia murmured. Alina nodded. I couldn't keep her, but I couldn't bury her either. I needed to know she was alive. Razia felt an ache rise in her chest. She had found a baby in the trash, thinking it was an abandoned child. But this baby had a mother who had been silenced, drugged, and betrayed. Do you want her back? Razia asked, her voice trembling. Alina looked out the window. The rain had stopped. Sunlight hit the cracked mirror just right, casting half her face in light, the other in shadow. I want her safe, she said. I want her to grow up in a place where no one decides her worth before she can even speak. Razia nodded slowly. Then, just before she left the room, Alina whispered, They'll come for you. Razia paused at the door. Let them. The air in the junkyard smelled like rust and gasoline. It was tucked far behind the Lyari railway tracks, forgotten by the city, known only to those who had nowhere else to go. Razia stood at the gate, clutching a worn photo of Bilal she had secretly taken from the Shah's discarded drawer. A photo from a staff-eyed dinner years ago. He was smiling then, standing in the background behind the family, as if he were already being erased. A man with oil-stained hands approached. What do you want? I'm looking for Bilal, Razia said, holding up the photo. He used to work for the Shahs. They said he's here. The man narrowed his eyes. I'm his brother, and you shouldn't be asking questions. Razia's heart jumped. She had found him, at least someone connected to him. I'm not the police, she said gently. I just want the truth about what they did to him, about Alina. At the mention of Alina's name, the man's expression changed. He gestured toward a broken-down bus frame nearby. They sat on the edge, behind rusted doors, as men worked around them without looking, as if they knew not to hear anything spoken in that corner. They said she seduced him. The brother began that he was just a driver who got greedy. But that's not true. Bilal loved her. He told me once, she doesn't treat me like a servant. She talks to me like I'm human. He paused. He was proud. He wanted to do the right thing. He even asked them for permission to marry her. What happened? Razia whispered. They beat him, the man said, locked him in the staff storage room for 3 days. Then one night, a van came. He was thrown in and taken away. I haven't seen him since. Razia felt nausea crawl up her throat. No one reported it. The man laughed bitterly. Report what? A poor driver who went missing. Against the Shahs, his disappearance was buried the same way they tried to bury the baby. Razia sat in silence, stunned by the weight of it all. A young man disappeared, a girl drugged into silence, a newborn dumped in the trash, and the world kept turning like nothing happened. Back at home that evening, Mahak waited near the window, worried. She flung the door open the moment she saw her mother approach. Where were you? She demanded. You said just half an hour. I found his brother, Razia replied, out of breath. He's not dead, Mahak, but he's not safe either. Then, in a near whisper, they didn't just throw the baby away, they threw Bilal away too. Suddenly, a loud knock interrupted their thoughts. Mahak jumped. Who is it? Razia called. Out. No answer. She opened the door slowly. There was no one. Only a small envelope taped to the wall. Inside was a torn piece of paper. On it, written in hurried scrawl, you were warned. Keep quiet, or you'll disappear too. The knock was soft, polite for the kind of neighborhood Razia lived in. She wiped her hands on her dupatta and opened the door cautiously. Mrs. Shah stood there, dressed immaculately in an off-white designer shawl, sunglasses perched in her hair like a crown. Behind her, a black car idled on the narrow street, engine humming like a warning. "May I come in?" she asked with a thin smile. Razia hesitated, then stepped aside. The air inside the tiny flat suddenly felt smaller. Mrs. Shah looked around, her gaze brushing over the cracked walls, the rickety fan, the small cot where Mehak sat frozen, clutching the baby to her chest. "She's beautiful," Mrs. Shah said, as if commenting on a showpiece in a boutique. "What have you named her?" Razia didn't answer. She simply folded her arms and waited. Mrs. Shah turned to her, still calm. "I'm here to settle this, respectfully." "Settle what?" Razia asked, her voice low. "The baby? The missing boy?" "Your daughter's silence. You think you're in a war, Razia," Mrs. Shah replied. "But you're not. You're in a story, and stories like yours don't end well if you try to be the hero." She pulled a small envelope from her handbag and placed it on the table. Inside, 2 lakhs, cash, enough to move, start fresh, maybe even open a small beauty parlor or tailoring shop. Give your daughter a future. Razia stared at the envelope, and in return, she asked. Mrs. Shah's smile faded. "You give me the baby, and you forget everything you think you know." Silence stretched between them. Outside, a dog barked. A child laughed in the distance. But inside, the walls were holding their breath. "I'm not selling her," Razia said finally. "She's not an item. She's someone's child, your grandchild." Mrs. Shah's eyes darkened. "Then I suggest you stop referring to her as mine. That child is no one's now. If you're smart, you'll let her stay that way." She turned and walked out without waiting for a reply. Razia locked the door behind her and leaned against it, heart racing. Mehak looked up, frightened. "What was that?" "A warning wrapped in kindness," Razia said. "The worst kind." That night, they barely slept. Every creak of the floorboards, every motorcycle in the distance made Razia's fingers twitch. She had refused the money, but the price might be far worse. Just before dawn, the door rattled. Not a knock, a break-in. Razia shot up, grabbing the baby from the cot. Mehak hid in the bathroom. The door crashed open. 2 masked men stormed in. Mehak screamed from behind the curtain. Razia clutched the child to her chest, bracing for pain, for silence, for whatever came next. But one of the men stepped back. Not her, just a warning. He knocked over a shelf, smashed a plate, then turned and vanished into the night. By the time the neighbors stirred and someone called the police, the damage was done. Nothing was stolen, nothing was said, but the message was louder than glass, shattering. When Mehak emerged, pale and shaking, Razia held her close. "They don't want money," she whispered. "They want silence." She looked down at the baby, now crying softly in her arms. "They thought I would break." She kissed the baby's forehead. "But I won't." The electricity had gone out again. The only light in the room came from Mehak's phone, its battery barely clinging to life. Razia sat beside her on the floor, rocking the baby gently. The silence after the break-in still lingered, thick and heavy. No one had been arrested. No one even believed them. It was past midnight when Mehak's phone vibrated. A message, no number, just a voice note. Mehak looked at Razia, unsure. "Play it," Razia said quietly. The voice that spilled through the speaker was trembling, half-whispered. It was Alina. "I don't have long. My mother is watching everything. But I need you to listen. I was never supposed to survive that pregnancy. They gave me pills, said it was to help me calm down. But I knew. I felt the baby inside me stop kicking one day. Then they said she died. I believed them. I had to. It was easier than living with the truth." The message crackled, then continued. "But when I saw the shawl, the one I stitched myself, the one I wrapped her in, I knew she lived, and I knew it was you, Razia." Razia stared at the phone, stunned. Her heart felt like it had been ripped open. "I don't have anyone left. Bilal's gone. I don't even know if he's alive. And now they've locked me in this house like a prisoner. They think I'm broken, but I'm not. I'm angry. I want to see her, just once, please, before they take her away forever." The message ended. Mehak's hands were trembling. "Ami," she said softly, "this is real. It's bigger than all of us." Razia nodded. "They lied to her. They drugged her. They buried her baby alive. And now they want us to clean up the mess." The next morning, Razia returned to the Shah residence as if nothing had happened. She needed to know if the message was genuine, if Alina had really sent it herself or if it was a trap. Mrs. Shah was waiting in the living room, perfectly dressed, sipping green tea. "You're back," she said smoothly. "I wasn't sure you would be." Razia forced a smile. "Work is work, Bibi. I need the job." Mrs. Shah's smile didn't reach her eyes. "I hope that means you've come to your senses." Razia didn't reply. She glanced toward the hallway. Alina's room was locked. The maid, Shanta, passed by, eyes darting nervously. Razia caught her wrist. "Is she okay?" Shanta paused, then looked around. In a whisper, she said, "She hasn't eaten in 2 days. Sometimes she cries so loud at night." The guard turns the TV up. Razia's chest tightened. She handed Shanta a folded piece of paper. "Can you slip this into her room, please?" Shanta nodded once and disappeared down the hall. Later that evening, Razia received a second voice note. This time, just 2 words: tomorrow. Rooftop. That night, the wind howled through the alleys as if warning them all. Razia couldn't sleep. She kept staring at the baby, at the face that had unknowingly become a battlefield. In her arms lay evidence of power, of shame, of a love denied its future. And tomorrow. On a rooftop somewhere above a city of secrets, 2 mothers were going to meet. One to remember, one to reclaim. The sun was just beginning to rise when Razia wrapped the baby in her softest blanket and quietly slipped out of the house. Mac watched from the doorway, silent and wide-eyed, her hand gripping the doorframe. Neither of them spoke. They both knew this could be the last time they saw each other if something went wrong. Razia walked briskly through the empty alleys, the city still caught between sleep and noise. She took a back path to the rooftop of an old textile building, a place no one used anymore. Just broken satellite dishes and forgotten wires. But it had a view of the entire city and a small corner hidden behind a water tank. That's where Alina waited. She looked nothing like the girl Razia had first met months ago. She was thinner now, paler, but her eyes held a strength that hadn't been there before. The cracked mirror in her room hadn't broken her, it had shown her who she was. When Alina saw the baby, she gasped and staggered back a step. Then, slowly, like approaching a flame, she walked forward and dropped to her knees. "She's real," Alina whispered. "They told me she wasn't. They told me I imagined her." Razia knelt beside her and handed her the child. The moment Alina held her, the baby blinked almost as if she recognized her. Alina pressed her forehead to the baby's and closed her eyes. Her shoulders shook, but she didn't cry out loud. Her pain was too deep for sound. "I used to sing to her before she was born," she said softly. "At night, quietly, so no one could hear. I didn't know if she could listen. But I wanted her to know I loved her." "You saved her," Razia whispered. "Even if they tried to erase it." Alina nodded. "I didn't think anyone would believe me. I thought I'd go mad one day. But you kept her alive." They sat there for what felt like hours, the wind brushing past them like a gentle witness. But below, someone else had seen Dot in the alley across the street. A black car sat with the engine off. Inside, Mrs. Shah held a pair of binoculars, her face unreadable. The driver beside her was silent. "Take a photo," she ordered. The shutter clicked. She looked at the image, Alina on the rooftop, cradling the child, and Razia beside her, like a guardian. "She thinks I won't act because she's my daughter." Mrs. Shah muttered, "She's wrong." She picked up her phone and made a call. "Do it, now." Back on the rooftop, Razia noticed something movement. On a distant rooftop across the street, a flash of light, a glint of something metallic. "Down," she shouted, grabbing Alina and pulling her to the ground just as a brick shattered beside them. "A warning shot," Alina gasped. "They're watching us. We need to leave. Now." They hurried down the fire escape, heartbeats thudding in sync. Razia clutched the baby tightly, shielding her from the wind and eyes that followed them. As they reached the street, a van pulled up suddenly in front of them. Razia froze, but to her shock, the driver inside was Bilal, bruised, thinner, alive. "Get in," he yelled. Now, Alina screamed his name, and they jumped into the van. He sped off, tires screeching, as behind them, The black car turned the corner in pursuit. The van tore through the early morning streets, its engine roaring like a beast refusing to die. Bilal gripped the wheel with white-knuckled hands, his eyes fixed on the rearview mirror. Behind them, the black car gained ground. Razia held the baby tight against her chest while Alina clung to Bilal's arm, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. She hadn't seen him since the night he vanished, since the night her world caved in. And yet here he was, as real as the child between them. "How did you find us?" Alina asked through shaky breath. "I never stopped watching," Bilal said. "I've been hiding, waiting for a chance." The baby stirred in Razia's arms and let out a soft whimper. It snapped Alina's attention back to reality. "They're following us," Razia said. "They won't stop unless we end this." Bilal nodded. "We need to go public." Alina turned toward him, her voice rising. "What? No, if the media gets involved, my parents will. They'll lose." Razia interrupted. "Because for once, the truth is heavier than their money." Bilal glanced back. "I have recordings, photos, from the day they beat me. I kept it all, hidden, waiting for the right moment, and this is it," Razia whispered. He swerved into a side street near a local TV station, small but loud. The kind that still ran real stories when bigger channels were bought off. The van skidded to a stop. Inside, a stunned receptionist stood frozen as Razia stormed in with the baby, followed by Alina and Bilal. "We need to speak to a journalist," Razia said. "Now, it's about the Shah family and what they've buried." Within an hour, the tiny office buzzed like a hive. Cameras, reporters, and interns all gathered around the footage Bilal had kept for months. Audio of Mr. Shah threatening him, photos of bruises, even a silent video from a servant's phone showing Alina collapsing during her forced abortion. Alina herself gave a trembling on-camera interview, clutching her daughter, naming names. "I was 17. They told me I was bringing shame, but the real shame was theirs, not mine. They took my voice. This is me taking it back." The story aired by noon. By nightfall, it had gone viral. The Shahs denied everything at first, but under pressure from the media and growing outrage online, authorities launched an emergency investigation. Human rights activists rallied around Alina. Women's groups held protests outside the Shah residence. For once, silence was not stronger than truth. Back in their flat, Razia watched it all unfold on a second-hand TV with poor reception. Mehak sat beside her, hugging the baby, who now had a name, Amana, meaning the one entrusted. "She changed everything," Mehak whispered. "This little girl." Razia nodded. "She reminded us that what people throw away still has worth." There was a knock at the door. This time, it wasn't a threat. Alina stepped inside, her face calmer, more whole. Behind her, Bilal held a small bag. "I came to say goodbye," she said. "We're leaving Karachi, starting fresh somewhere they don't know our names." Razia stood. "You're strong, Alina. You didn't let them win." Alina smiled weakly. "Only because you didn't give up on us." She stepped forward and took Razia's hands. "Keep Amana. I know I gave birth to her, but you raised her when no one else would. She's safe with you, loved. That's all I ever wanted." Razia's eyes welled up. "She'll always know your name, and one day, she'll know what you survived." Alina nodded, kissed her daughter's forehead one last time, and walked out. Bilal followed her, his arm around her shoulders. They didn't look back. As dusk fell over the city, Razia stood by the window, Amana asleep in her arms. Outside, Karachi buzzed as usual, chaotic, messy, unforgiving. But somewhere beneath it all, something had shifted. The truth had been dragged out of the shadows, and this time, no one was strong enough to bury it again.